We've talked a little bit about the different political ideologies of Democrats and Republicans, and today we're going to talk about political campaigns and how to actually get elected. The purpose of having different political parties is to get a candidate elected. Like, that's why they exist. Only one person can become president. And so you have to try to get the most people to vote for you. So that's why we have a two-party system. A party will say, well, we believe in this, and they will get a certain amount of people. Okay, well, we also believe in X, Y, or Z, and that gets you more people. So people can start aligning and saying, well, this person believes, this party has more things that I believe in, I'm going to vote this way. And people start dividing up until you have a clear understanding of, well, this person versus this person, and you can have a vote and you end up with a clear winner. Political parties allow the public to understand what a candidate believes in general, because the party is going to support most of the things that that candidate believes. So the main purpose of a political party is to get a specific candidate elected and to inform the public on the general views that that candidate will hold. It also, to some degree, political parties will check the other party that's in power to some extent. But we want to focus on the actual process of getting elected. So it starts off with a primary. And a primary is the race to find someone to represent your party, right? There's a lot of people that want to be president, and so they can choose a party. They might want to be president and run in the Democratic Party, or they want to be in the Republican Party. So this year has been really interesting, this being 2016. There were 16 people that wanted to be the Republican candidate for president. 16 people. So in the primary, you had 16 Republicans running ads, going state to state, running campaigns, just to get nominated as the Republican candidate. Okay, so you had speeches, kissing babies, all of that stuff. The Democratic side, they didn't have as many people that wanted to be the Democratic nominee. They had 5, but again, they're going to do the same thing, go state to state to state, and try to convince you that they're the best Democrat. They're the best person to represent you as a Democrat. So primaries are the first step. You have to get nominated by your party. So how do you get nominated by your party? You're going state to state, getting people to know who you are and what you believe, and you vote. And we have the primary vote, and it's done through something called the Electoral College. The Electoral College is used for primaries. It's also used in the general election. So we need to understand the Electoral College, and the Electoral College is sometimes considered confusing. So we're going to do our best to explain how that works. Every state has a certain amount of votes, okay? And those votes are based on population. The same way when we talked about the House of Representatives being based on population, so South Carolina has 9 House members, that's the same amount of electoral votes we get, okay? So Florida has more electoral votes than South Carolina. California has a lot of electoral votes. When you go to the polls and you vote, it's voting for a candidate, but the state itself will vote as a whole. Okay, so for example, this is from 2012. Let's say you live in South Carolina. You went to the polls and you voted for Obama. Obama did not win South Carolina. So technically, South Carolina did not, your vote in South Carolina, you did not vote for Obama. Your vote voted for Romney because it votes as a state. You have to go to the polls to get a majority in your state, right? It could have been the other way. If a lot of Democrats showed up and voted, then the state may have gone to Romney. But the South is predominantly Republican. It used to be called the Solid South. And in general, if you live in the South, if you are a Democrat, your votes tend to get washed out because the majority of people in the South vote Republican. So 9 votes for Romney in the 2012 election. However, more liberal states, so like if you lived out in California, you'd have the opposite problem. Let's say you lived in California, you voted for Romney. Well, yes, you did. You tried to get your state to vote for Romney. You're trying to get the state to vote that way, but there are more Democrats that live in California. So the state itself, with its 55 delegates, those 55 delegates all went to Obama. It's all or nothing. They don't split delegates. Okay? So that's why people get a little bit confused. Well, then why do I vote? If I voted for Obama, but then my votes didn't even really count. They all went to the other side. Well, that's the Electoral College. So based on population of where you live and what the majority of the people in your state want. So primaries. Think of primaries as the very first step, trying to find someone to elect for your party. It's Republicans versus Republicans, Democrats versus Democrats. You're going to have that vote, that primary vote, to find out who that candidate is. Goes the same way. So for example, South Carolina, it went to Trump. Florida went to Trump. All of the South went to Trump. There were a few places that went to Cruz, but the majority of the country voted for Trump. For the Democrats, South Carolina did vote for Clinton versus Sanders. There were some more center states. The center of the state seemed to be a little bit more keen towards Sanders. So we end up this election season, we've got our candidate. We've got Clinton for the Democrats, and we have Trump for the Republicans. So now that we're out of primary season, now we're going to have to figure out, what does America want? Do we want a Democrat or do we want a Republican? And that's what we're sitting through now, campaign ads. Campaign ads are ugly, and that's what people see when they think of political campaigns, because they're used to the mudslinging and the bringing up of dirt, and they think, oh my goodness, can political ads get any more negative? Political campaigns have always been negative. The first political party was Jefferson versus Adams, and they had a horrible negative campaigns towards each other. Jefferson's camp accused President Adams of having a hideous hermaphroditical character, which was neither the force and firmness of a man nor the gentleness and sensibility of a woman. Adams called Jefferson mean-spirited, low-lived fellow, the son of a half-breed Indian squire, sired by a Virginian mulatto father. They attacked each other viciously, so negative campaigning is nothing new. I'm going to put some links in your lesson so you can look at some of the negative campaign ads. One of the more famous ones being LBJ and Kennedy is pretty interesting to watch. But you're trying to put yourself in the best light, show your strengths, but at the same time, show that the other candidate is not the person who you want to vote for. Symbols. Symbols are huge in political campaign. This, of course, is from the 2012 presidential election. Who can remember that this picture was everywhere? It sort of becomes iconic. So you want to sort of make images, things that people can remember, name recognition. You want people to go to the polls, see your name, and think, okay, yeah, that's who I want to vote for. So you've got to get your name out there, and people have to get excited about you, and they have to want to vote for you. So negative campaigning is one aspect of it, but you also have to get people behind you and want to vote. If no one shows up to the polls, then that's going to be a problem too. In 2012, one of the biggest reasons that Barack Obama was elected was because African Americans turned out in force for the polls. African Americans tend to be very low turnout voters. They just don't go to the polls. But of course, with the African American candidate, they showed up, they voted, and they won. So you have to show up, you have to vote. Numbers are important. So positive stuff is good too. All right, so during an election, you're going to see a lot of polls. So what is What is a poll? You can get a poll for anything. And I'm not talking about the poll where you go and vote, right? Oh, I'm going to the polls. I went to the polls today. A poll has actually two meanings. A poll can be the place where you go and vote, like I'm going to the polls to vote. But what I'm talking about when I say polls is taking a poll, like the verb form, not the noun. So taking a poll, like if you're in a school and they're like, okay, let's take a poll to see who wants pizza versus who wants hamburgers for lunch on Friday, right? So you take a poll of the class. People are constantly taking polls during an election to see, are people more conservative? Do people believe in stronger immigration? Are people for gun control? Are people voting for Clinton? Are they voting for Sanders? What do people think? So they're constantly polling the American public during election season. And you can see some of those polls here. I've just given you some examples of polls that are being done during this particular 2016 election. I guess I have to redo this. We're no longer in election season. But why are polls so important? One of the things that make polls so important is something called the bandwagon effect. We like to think of ourselves as independent voters, right? That we just think our minds and we vote for who we strongly believe in, which is to some extent true. However, whoever is ahead in the polls, people tend to think, oh, well, that person's leading. There's a reason that that person's leading, right? They will jump on the bandwagon. They don't like to be voting for the outsider. A lot of times people think, well, I mean, I'm not that informed. I mean, I might like what Cruz said, or he seems like an interesting candidate, but 50% of people like Trump. There must be something that I don't know. And they jump on the bandwagon. So there's something called a bandwagon effect. If you can stay ahead in the polls, the longer you're ahead in the polls, the more people will start joining your party. So it's important for the candidate to stay ahead because of this bandwagon effect. So we've got political ads, we've got polling, we've got two sets of elections. We've got to beat out other Democrats and we've got to beat out other Republicans. Well, now that we're elected, we have to beat the other candidate. All of this takes money. Campaign spending has gone up and up and up and up and up, right? There's lots of money involved in political campaigns. This is from the Federal Election Commission, which is the government body that regulates political funds. Look at the increments. This is not thousands. This is millions, and this is by month. Okay? So you're looking in the month of March at Sanders spending getting up there, close to $50 million in the month of March, running up to that primary. Okay? Is there a correlation between the amount that a candidate spends? Well, sure. Think about somebody like Kasich. Kasich was hardly known, his name was not recognized, and obviously he lost. Okay? But somebody like Clinton and Sanders and Trump, they're your top spenders. And who do we end up with as winning? We have Trump and we have Clinton. So money and name recognition and political campaigning, they all play a big part in who gets elected. So how does that affect elections, people donating money? How do you give money to people, to a candidate that you strongly believe in? You can give money. An individual can give money, right? I can give money. You can give money. There are caps for an individual, right? So if you want to give money, you can give up to $2,000, $2,700 per election to a federal candidate. And there's different amounts that you can give for different elections. So how do they get all of this money? Where are these millions and millions of dollars coming from? There's something called super PACs, and super PACs are very controversial, and I put some links into some pretty funny skits and done by Stephen Colbert on the absurdity of super PACs. You might want to take a look at that. It's pretty interesting. But super PACs stand for independent, like they're supposed to be apart from the political campaign, Political action committees. Political action committees are not limited to the amount of money they can accept. So they can accept unlimited amount of money. This money can come from you and me. It can come from companies. It can come from unions. The only thing is that super PACs can't coordinate with the candidate. So let's say you are the NRA and you believe in guns, right? You believe in gun rights. So the NRA can form a super PAC, and they can say, we believe strongly in your right to the Second Amendment and having a gun. So they accept people will donate money to them, right? They give your money to this NRA super PAC. The NRA super PAC cannot talk to Trump. They are not going to talk to him. They're not going to get with him and say, hey, we have all this money. But they're going to start running ads for him. They're going to say, Trump believes this. He supports gun rights and your right to the Second Amendment and all of this stuff. So they're helping the political candidate, right? They're running ads for him, even though they're technically not. They're not with him. They're not talking to him. But that is the only restriction, is that the super PAC cannot talk to the candidate. But other than that, they can support him and run ads for him and use all of that money and that power to get him elected. So of course, this can turn into are companies, are certain people able to buy candidates, right? So if you're a company that makes guns, right? Let's say you make guns and you give $20 million to a super PAC because there's no restrictions. And then that super PAC then starts running ads for Trump or whoever. It doesn't have to be Trump, but just picking him because it's in my head. That candidate wins. Is that candidate now somehow tied or obligated to this company that got him elected? They didn't talk, but it's clearly known, hey, I gave a bunch of money to this super PAC, and this is what I expect. So maybe during the election, your laws are, maybe you show some leniency towards gun laws. A lot of that happened, we saw a lot of that during the other coin, let's do it for a Democratic side, Obama. When he was running for office, he had really large super PACs for government health care. I can't remember the name of the super PAC, but there's some super PACs for health care. And they ran ads supporting President Obama, and they were obviously saying, if you elected President Obama, he was going to support these ideas on health care. Obama gets elected, and we start seeing a real strong push for Obamacare and healthcare reform. So money is heavily involved in political campaigns and getting presidents elected. There are certain websites called like Open Secrets, so like you can go to these websites and see who is donating money and how much, if you are interested in that sort of thing. So enjoy the campaign season and make sure you go out and vote.